It was up, Cindy, and it is currently on your view of all the
Okay. All
people,
right.
I think.
I was seeing if my microphone was on because it was crickets there for a second. Well, hello. I'll go ahead and start. My name's Cindy Frenzel. I'm one of those who've been around a long time and been doing fire prevention teams for a long time. I've probably been on 28 assignments between prevention teams and being a PIO. I'm more comfortable doing team leader, team member type work, but I know what my strengths are, and one of my strengths is not to be in front of the camera. So I do like doing PIO work, but I like to push other people to in front of the camera. But I did put this page up. I'm using Word documents rather than a PowerPoint because we are looking at delegations of authority. And I have a Smokey Bear image and a Smokey Footprint image. And we talk about how sometimes we don't want to use Smokey Bear. And over Christmas, I found a Care Bear at Walmart. It's the I Care Bear, Love the Earth. So I thought he might be an appropriate mascot for this particular presentation. And the drawings, I actually drew these images in my pottery business, and I updated the footprint of Smokey. I have his whole foot and I have half of a foot. If you want to have access to those, help yourself, I'll send them to you. They're just a little bit different version. They're approved images through the Forest Service. So I'd be happy to share those with you if you'd like to have those. The delegation of authority for fire prevention education teams is used to provide the required information for the operation of the team. And the prevention teams aren't the only ones who have delegations of authority. It's when you go on to an area where you have no authority and the host is giving you that authority to lead the team and to do specific tasks. It's one of the most important issues facing the team leader and will set the stage for all operating procedures that govern your stay on the host unit. I have seen them 6 pages. I've seen them 1 page. But if you get a 6 or 10-page delegation of authority, you really need to comb through that and make sure there's not too much information, too many objectives. Really, at the beginning, the team leader, the PIOs, the team members should comb through that draft delegation of authority and make sure that it's exactly what you need. And you will be given that opportunity in the first couple of days on the team. So in the beginning, this agreement must be completed as soon as possible after arrival. The host unit should be alerted that this will be needed and work should begin prior to arrival. So usually I talk to whoever calls me or whoever I call, and I say, have you thought about the delegation of authority? They might say, what's that? Or they might say, oh yeah, we've already written it. I'd like them to say somewhere in between that, but it really helps if they know what it is. But when I first started, nobody knew what this was, and I had to write them for the host unit, and that's been done a lot. I would rather them write it so they have some say into what's going into that, and they actually have to sit down and read it and write it and really think through what their goals are. The team leader is responsible for this document, but as I said, you as somebody else on the team may be asked to help. Other parts of the team really aren't supposed to be working until you get there when you travel. Me as a team leader, I start working as soon as I hear that I'm going. Depending on the host's experience, you will need to start talking about the DOA the first time you speak with anybody. Send samples from other teams if needed. Not too many, 1 or 2. Write a first draft if needed. Correspond with the person writing it. It could be forest supervisor is writing it. It's usually somebody much lower who's writing it, who then gets the forest supervisor to sign it, or whatever agency you're in. The following sample I'm going to show has come from the Fire Prevention Team Leader Training Guide, and I'll show a lot of the fundamentals that go into it. So sample delegation of authority. Oh, it's just, I mean, this is like, oh my gosh, boring stuff, but it's extremely important. It's extremely important. Everything is not all, you know, Smokey Bear. We got this is one of my most important tools is the puppets, the Smokey Bear hat, all the stuff, all the, you know, the whatever. That's the fun stuff. But this is the rock that everything else sits on. So file code if necessary. I've never even seen a file code on a delegation of authority, but date, subject, delegation of authority for Cindy Frunzel's team or whatever team you would call it. Then it's said to the team leader, whoever the team leader is. You are hereby assigned as the fire prevention team leader for the blah blah team. You may not have a name yet, but you could say maybe the George Washington Jefferson National Forest team, or, you know, just the prevention team on this unit, and say where you are. The team will be fully functional as of this time and date. You could also put the 2-week period that you'll be there. You have full authority and responsibility for managing the fire prevention team operations with the framework of legal status, current policy, all that language. A formal evaluation of your performance will be conducted. I've only seen that once where they mention the evaluation. I'm usually the one that has to beg for the team evaluation before I leave. There will be something about safety. I've seen the last one that I got actually had this language 0 tolerance in it, but there will be at least a sentence or two about safety. Be accountable for safety is one of the top priorities and responsibilities. We know that, I know that, that's my top priority. We'll have 0 tolerance for alcohol, drug abuse. I will take appropriate actions to ensure that everyone is involved in assignment knows and follows safety protocols. So we will follow regulations depending on whether you're on a reservation or a state park or federal lands, but you'll know all the regulations that are surrounding you. They're included of motor vehicles, cultural, archaeological. So there's a lot of that safety language that's in there. It's never that much. I've not seen a lot of them have quite that much language, but they'll always talk about safety. And team leaders always initiate writing a safety plan. And then we always have a safety briefing every day in the morning at our morning meeting. Cost accountability, the most important thing you need to know is who is going to get you the money. Who is that person? The team business advisor is listed below, but they're saying keep a spreadsheet of your daily costs. Know that you aren't supposed to go above this amount. I've never seen on a delegation how much money the team has gotten, but there is a little bit of, sometimes they'll talk about cost accountability, mostly about gathering the information at the end, how much was spent, you know, and you have to be frugal. You're not just going to go spend $10,000 on printing like was mentioned before. You have to be frugal and know how you need to do things. Team business advisor, that's probably the person that is going to find you money to buy things. And this is very important, the name and phone number and email address of the person who's going to be helping you find money. Team liaison, that is the second most important person who is going to be working with you, whether it's the assistant fire management officer or the public affairs person or whoever is on that host unit who is going to be with you or talk to you daily about everything. Public information, there's going to be some kind of public affairs officer. There may be multiple public affairs officers if it's an interagency team. So you need to know who they are, and they need to be listed in this delegation, because that's who they have told you up front, this is who you need to talk to. Here it says your team is given permission to manage local and national media contacts. Sometimes you're not allowed to do that. So there'll be you need to have a specific, are you allowed to talk to the media or are you not? Will you be providing just written information for the media, and their public affairs officer will only talk to the media? So that's something that needs to be worked out. And all of this is done in the in-briefing that you have. I've had in-briefings that were as elaborate as being a press conference. In Pennsylvania, our in-briefing was a press conference. It was really cool. That's the only time I've ever seen that done, but it was fantastic. And then I've not gotten in-briefings before. One team, the fire management officer said hi and then went on vacation, and then there was nobody else in the office. So we kind of did our own thing and found somebody who would be our person who we could go to, and it ended up being the forest supervisor. So, I mean, that it just goes the gamut. But if you can get this information down on paper, that helps a lot. Local and social issues, that's always in there. You have to be sensitive to local and social interest issues. Procurement, where are you getting supplies? Is there a central area that you could get Nomex, or did you forget your hard hat, or whatever you need? That might be on there. Probably not, usually it's on there. Base of operations, that sometimes it's on there, but they'll usually say you're working out of such and such office, and that information is also what you're talked through in the in-briefing. You probably have about an hour. You have your list of questions. That might, I mean, if you don't have lodging yet, if you don't have a work center yet, if you don't have, you need to know about printing. You need to know about, do they have a color laser copy machine, which would solve all your problems. That's the type of time. Maps, that's the time to ask for that. Team reporting. The team leader will be responsible for doing a daily activity report, preparing a schedule, conducting briefings. They'll tell you how often they want to get information. I hardly ever do a daily report. I'll do one every other day, unless they ask for daily. I've had them ask for every 5 days. Then they'll say you will develop a final and transition report of action. That's usually on there. Reporting and documenting the hours of work. That's something that we always do. The objectives. This could be 2 or 3 things, or it could be a whole page of things. This is what they want you to do. And it's this, when we develop our communication plan, we look at these objectives. What's on the delegation? What do they want us to do? You always develop your communication based on what's on the delegation and what information comes out of that in briefing, and then making phone calls to your key contacts. All of that needs to be done in the first couple of days, and it's usually done by the team leader or whoever is designated. Key contact list, that's always nice. All of these people, just basically they'll probably choose from that, but you probably don't have all of that on the actual delegation of authority. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. So I'm going to put on the unicorn ears, unicorn hat, because I have picked probably the most boring slideshow today, but I just want to wake you up. When I'm feeling sad, I always put on the unicorn hat. So, okay, I'll take it off now. That's just to wake you up. So in 2020, I went to California and worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the regional director wrote the delegation, and we're thinking about what we looked at on the sample, we're gonna highlight those things that are actually on this delegation. This is a fantastic delegation. It's about 3 pages, but she has everything on there. And were a couple of fire preventions officers who helped do this. They've had multiple fire prevention teams in the Indian lands in California, so they know what they're doing. And I was coming in to help be an extra team leader and to train, get some people signed off as team leaders. So it was a good experience. I've worked for them a couple of times. So she's got the dates. As of this date, I am delegated the authority and responsibility for the Pacific Fire Prevention Team to the designated team leader during this time period. The team will conduct fire prevention and planning awareness activities on behalf of the Pacific region. The following individuals are designated as my contacts. So that's the most important information there, besides who's going to give me money. So Nathan and Monty were contacts in the different areas of the state. Their goal was to have multiple fire prevention teams. I was the first one. We were setting the stage. We were going to write the plan. We were going to get all the products in anticipation for these other teams to go out. Unfortunately, because of COVID, our activities got canceled about 3 days that we got in there. I had just finished at another national forest in Northern California, working on a team, and drove down to work on this one. And then it's like, they've closed everything up. All the reservations were closed because of COVID. So, but we still worked. We still worked and did what we could to prepare information in anticipation of it changing. So here we have financial contact. C, team members are to be sensitive to local politics and social issues related to public land management and use. So there you have your social and political issues. Since 2020, we've had information on these delegations about COVID-19. A lot of the reservations were closed to outsiders because of COVID. So it ended up we weren't able to go anywhere anyway. We just did a little bit in one of the reservations, 1 or 2 of them, before it got shut down. We did go to a radio station and do some interviews on the radio station, but everything we had planned got shut down. But there they have that written in there about COVID. Then she has the short-term and long-term objectives. Look how many there are. This is a lot. Usually it's maybe, 3 or 4 inches of objectives, but they had specific things they wanted to do. Short-term objectives: respond to requests from the tribes. Arson response: they had a huge spike in arson occurrence, and so we wanted to see what we could help with that. There were some products developed in Oregon, Washington that we were going to look at, see if we could reproduce. Signs, social media, we were going to make a social media plan. Materials, we were going to purchase materials for that next 3 incoming teams. Long-term objectives, of course, just continuing with interagency cooperation, local relationships, working with CAL FIRE, and then working on their strategic plan, their fire prevention strategic plan. We didn't get to do that like we wanted to. Campaigns, use current materials that they have, but also think about what new things we wanted to do. They were currently using the One Less Spark, One Less Wildfire information. And they had an idea, Monty had an idea about a fire education council. It's as being different animals that the tribes respect. And so we played around with that idea, and Margot Witt developed some draft videos about, you know, how would we say this, how would we would say what they wanted to say using a tribal council of animals. So that's something, was a really neat idea. It really needed to be developed by the community members, but because we couldn't go into the communities, we just made some draft things that he could go with and see what he could do. We also looked for tribal artists to develop some products, and got a little bit on farther on that. Training, of course, we were working with some PETL trainees and getting some people signed off on that. Okay, here's F is that safety, personal safety. G, maintain fiscal accountability. H, establish a record keeping process. Here they said FMO will be updated on team's progress every 3 to 5 days. That was nice. And then all laws are adhered to. So then we signed it. And they did add the list of team members at the bottom, which was nice. So we've got lots of different people. The communication plan, just to go over kind of how we interpreted that delegation of authority. So we put, we're going to assist with messaging for fire prevention and arson. This initial team will complete strategic planning and fire prevention material development that can be used by future teams. Here we see we're talking about interagency efforts, conduct fire prevention planning and awareness activities. We saw that term in the DOA. We've got the agency contacts. I've got some maps of current fires going on in California. I always like to put maps and pictures and drought maps in the communication plan and really spice it up so that people will actually look at it. Agency contacts listed above will assist the team with, and then, you know, we've got a list. For questions regarding procurement and finances, there's Angelique's name. So here we go with the objectives. We will be sensitive to local issues. We will respond to local needs. We will pay attention to COVID. We'll have interagency cooperation. We will do specific training. And also we were learning how to use Zoom and Teams and SharePoint, you know, all that stuff. FireNet was even new to some people then too. And then arson, that was neat. I don't often get to do anything with arson. Of course, you can't prevent arson with fire prevention traditionally, but we did have Paul Savona, who was with California Fire, CAL FIRE. Anytime there would be an arson fire, one of our people would go with him, and they were trainees. They were fire investigator trainees. So that's one thing that BIA has. A lot of people are fire investigators, and they can respond and be right on there. Arson messaging, that's when I said that some of that stuff was being made in another state on some other BIA areas, and so we were gonna, you know, not reinvent the wheel. We were gonna use what they had, but we weren't able to do that with this team. Signs, they wanted to design signs and have a sign plan. Social media. So creating contact lists for tribal radio stations and social media channels, work with cooperating agencies, use existing new fire prevention and arson messaging, create media releases, PSAs, create videos. We did work a lot on the video idea and the audio PSAs. Prepare the public for the potential for increased fire restrictions and the possibility of evacuations. I mean, 2020 was a horrible fire year in California. Everything was on fire. And it didn't help that there was arson going on. So the long term was the planning. We were a little more specific about the fire prevention strategic plan. We in briefing and sitting down, we really, got an idea of what they wanted to do with that, not just in Northern California, but Southern California. The teams, they were going to have 2 teams do North, then the following 2 teams do Southern California. And then the new campaign of the Fire Council is on there. Materials, conduct, budget, records, laws. So all of that is in our communication plan. We have the target audiences, then the key messages that were developed. So that is the communication plan. So what is this? That's the one I'm on. Okay. Any questions? I can't see you guys. I'm just seeing my screen. Okay. Just yell out if you have a comment or a question.
We're here, we promise, Cindy.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, at least the few times that I have been involved with national teams, and then the stories that I've heard from people like yourself who have been involved over their careers, it seems like, so we've already talked about in this workshop that just getting the ordering regions to know what teams are for. So, right, we're not patrol, we're not going to give out tickets. And then they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to do prevention and you guys go do your thing. And I think it's happened on at least 3 out of the 4 teams I've been with is that regional contact. Oh, we actually live up in the foothills. I don't have cell service after 5 o'clock at night. And oh, I'm taking vacation for a week. We didn't tell you guys that. And do you have a success story of early communication with those expectations leading to maybe having 2 or 3 contacts or a different contact? Or is there a strategy for making that really clear that we need somebody available?
I guess that's the team leader's job, is to find that person and talk to that person. Sometimes if there's a lot of fires going on and these people haven't had a day off for 3 months, working 18-hour days, which is what happened in Alaska, you are not going to really hear from your person. But you get everything worked out in that first 3 days of what you're supposed to do. And we're supposed to work it basically independently, then letting them know what we're doing. And sometimes your job is to go out and be amongst the public, because I've had people tell me that, we've had teams come in and say, oh, we're basically too good to go out and talk, run around the forest. We want to develop, in the early days, we want to develop a campaign that's going to become famous. And I would tell them that if you want me to go visit campgrounds and talk to people and set up a table in the pop-up, the pop-up concept, just setting up a table, that's what you do. But it has to be documented in that delegation of authority, and they just need more people on the ground, and there's not always fire prevention patrol people available. And 15 years ago, that wasn't, on the East Coast, there was not a one fire prevention patrol person. It was not something that was there. And there's more people in these positions, but they might not be available. And they can't be ordered because nobody's available. So they're calling you in. So yeah, you can go and develop them a campaign, but you can also go and develop them some really nice materials that they don't have time to make, and print them and laminate them and take them out everywhere. And your goal is to reach as many people as possible. So you do need to tell them that we can do media, we can go interview, we can do a press conference, we can, you need to tell them that we can do all this and get the word out. But if your force supervisor or your, whoever on the BLM or the state wants you to go out on the ground and talk to people, I think that's what the team needs to do. And that's just from my experience. You don't have to be that person that develops the campaign like it was in the early days when everybody thought that's what the national teams did. Well, the national teams can do that. Yeah, we can do that. But sometimes you need something else. I know I'm talking around a tree, but does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, it's the being available for doing what the forest is asking you to do, balancing that with
Yeah,
what you know your team can do.
yeah, yeah. And if there's no one available to be with you every day or talk to you every day, a lot of times that's the way it is. If the fire management officer um, can only talk to you like at 10 o'clock at night after he's done everything, then you make sure that everybody gets the daily report. You make sure everybody signed off on the communication plan. And then from the communication plan, you start developing your products. And in your communication plan, you'll say, well, we need to develop these products before we hit the ground. And the majority of time, if I have that color laser printer in these federal offices, I'm fine. I don't need to print anything. Be nice to have access, to some printing through some other situations, but that's the way I did it many, many times when there was not time to go to a professional printer or the government printing office, which was a big issue in years past. So, yeah, I don't know if I am answering your question, but I'm trying. So, well, the other example I'm going to give is Utah in 2021. Utah, the state of Utah had.
Hand up in the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Looks like Gwen.
Let me go to here. Let me go to Gwen.
I had a question about whether you've had the scope of the delegation of authority change midstream. Have you had, they add things on there or say, oh, you're going to do this instead of what we said originally?
No, but I've had it change when a second team came in. Have you had yours change?
Sometimes they add things on there and that you didn't find in the delegation. I've just, if that was common or if it was just
You mean
something
on the
that happened every now
communication
and then.
plan? On the communication plan? Yeah, that can happen. Yeah. There's not everything you do has to be on the delegation, but that's a start. But yeah, it doesn't happen a lot, but I guess once in a while they'll throw on something else. But you can say, well, it wasn't in our approved communication plan, but we'll try to work on it. Things will come up, especially like in the Sequoia National Forest on the emergency response. Things were changing constantly, so we would come up with ideas and kind of run with it. So, and it also depends on how many people you have able. You might have an event that kind of pops up. They say, oh, well, let's do this parade. Let's do this event. So yeah, once in a while, but I've never had a delegation change, but we've had things added on kind of once in a while. Okay. Where was I? Here I am. Okay. And I can't see, yell out if the hands are up because I can't see that part. So in Utah, the state had done a campaign, their own campaign. Then the state, BLM, and Manti La Sal National Forest got together and ordered a team, and they pooled their money for the team. And we got to go. My goodness, it was incredible. So it was it's one of those bucket list things. It just seemed like in the last couple of years, I've got to go to some really, really neat places. I mean, my whole career has been really neat, but these areas are super cool. So on their delegation here, they've mentioned safety, laws, regulations, ordinances, harassment-free work environment, purchases, what we do about that, local political and social issues. The established supervisor for stage 2 restrictions and smoke-related message was the fire management officer on the forest. For wildfire prevention or fire sense campaign messages, Caitlin Webb was the point of contact for the state. And then we had to leave all of our products, reports, supplies with our assigned supervisor. We had a lot of information about COVID because we were going through COVID. We had some logistics. So we worked out of the Manti LaSalle office in Price, Utah, and then we went to Moab and worked it out of the BLM office. So it was kind of half and half. They have the established hours, the record keeping process is needed, the tracking the expenses is needed. Work closely with the public affairs officers. So they had 3 public affairs officers that we worked closely with. And we were not allowed to, I don't think we were allowed to post on social media, but we provided the tool, the guts for them to post. Who's our liaisons and contacts? And then our expectations. So we were to take the new Fire Sense campaign and use as much as we could from that. And we definitely did use as much as we could. We also developed some things, posters and things that were made into large posters for the stage 2 fire restrictions that were going on the national forest. And there was also restrictions on BLM and restrictions for the state. So all of that complex messaging that always happens when you have multiple restrictions going on. The other immediate concern relates to a recent Forest Service fire in the Moab area, which is a high recreation area. So we did a couple of events up there. We made those giant signboards that you see on fires. We actually borrowed them from the fire, and we took them to the national parks, right at the entrance to the national park with our fire prevention messages on it. So that was neat. We got to use some of the resources that were used at the actual fire. And then the closeout evaluations, closeout report, and then we will conduct a closeout briefing. Closeout briefings. I didn't used to do PowerPoint presentations, but now that seems to be the thing. It's really nice. I mean, before we would print out the final report and everybody would get a printed copy. Now you give them a thumb drive, and then we just do a PowerPoint presentation to show what was in that report instead of everybody having a report and flipping through it. So that's one thing that has changed. So this is the final report. So that's the Fire Sense logo. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I like it. I thought it was a good campaign. Some people weren't sure they understood Fire Sense. You know, I have Fire Sense, or what's your Fire Sense? So you can see, I always use the fire occurrence and drought maps and potential maps in my reporting. I also like to use these if you do public events, especially if you have a really cool drought map. Print it on a plotter and laminate it, and people go nuts over this stuff. So we had 4 of us, 3 of us from Virginia. Here's some, you know, we have to have silly pictures, but Canyon County District and Moab Field Office, that's where we were in for the BLM. That's what I couldn't remember. So, background. Sorry if I'm making you seasick. So the objectives, they wanted the community outreach at events. So we did some events. The We developed several videos, short 4 videos. We developed the posters using the graphics from the Fire Sense campaign that we printed out on the plotters to use at events and at different things. The videos Let Freedom Ring, Not Fire Sirens, Drought and Fire Restrictions, Defensible Space. JB did a fantastic job walking around talking. Cheaper than a ticket, and they're burning money. You know, preventing fires is cheaper than a ticket. But we had the standard fire restriction posters that we printed and laminated. And there was a lot of people involved. So calling, talking, visiting people from the different offices was vital, very vital. We got what they wanted, what they needed. Providing those, you can see there on the door, it's pretty standard stuff, what you do. And the UtahFireInfo.com. Utah is very famous for having fantastic prevention activities. So we did provide training opportunities. You'll notice it was 109. I only get to go places when it's really, really hot. That's what somebody asked me that. So providing for safety, your electronic closeout. They wanted a